This took place several years ago when I had just graduated high school and wanted to take a year off and sort of relax before going to college. I was going into aeronautical engineering as it had always been a dream of mine to work on all things aviation and space related. With a lot of hard work and luck, my journey led me to now where I currently work in an aviation company that you have most likely heard of. But let us go back in time to when I was young, 18 years old. I'd been working at a local diner. I realized that Joshua, my manager, and the owner of the diner was a racist piece of crap. You see, I'm an immigrant that came to the US from Vietnam. I surprisingly never had to undergo any racism in school here, and the people in my neighborhood were cool. Even my parents, despite behaving like stereotypical Asian parents in public, never had to undergo any racism. And they always told me how glad they were able to come to this country. Sadly, I would be the one to understand what it meant to be discriminated against. Let me be clear. I was never called any slurs. I was never physically abused or anything like that. But racism takes many forms, and Joshua was good at nonviolent racism. Let me tell you a bit about him. He was an extremely ambitious man in his mid 40s. When I say ambitious, I mean that he was one of those people who seemed to always be talking about being on the grind and hustling. In his defense, he did put in the effort, and the diner was pretty successful. It was always packed with people during meal times and had a steady stream of customers who popped in for really good coffee, even at odd hours. Anyway, Joshua seemed like a good enough boss to work with initially. He was a bit strict when it came to punctuality and didn't like hearing excuses, even if they were legitimate ones. It was a bit annoying to deal with, but I understood his perspective. I had no issues with working hard, and I thought if he saw that I was doing a good job, he would be pleased. This was not to be. I didn't notice anything off in the beginning, since I always thought that his slightly rude attitude was just simply him being a strict boss. I thought it was normal until one day. I was passing by the break room and I overheard one of my coworkers say, "It's really sad how he's always so horrible towards Jen." My name's Jennifer. "I know, right? I wish." I didn't hear the rest of the conversation, but what I heard made me more aware of his behavior. His wife, Shannon, was a sweet woman and the one who had interviewed and hired me. I now realize that I would have not even gotten the job if it had just been Joshua. Anyway, after overhearing that conversation between my coworkers, I started keeping track of all the instances in which Joshua would criticize me. I soon realized that I was the only one who would receive his feedback among all the other coworkers. Let me give you an example. One evening, we had a lot of customers to deal with, and I was waitressing. I was taking down a particularly confusing order when I heard Joshua snapping fingers that were beckoning me over. I apologized to the customer, who was naturally annoyed that I left his table mid-order, and went over to Joshua. "You need to speak more clearly when you're talking to our customers. A lot of people can't understand your thick accent. Can you do that for me?" I had an ever so slight accent since my parents would speak Vietnamese at home, and it sort of just stayed with me. I never had any complaints about being understood, and my accent was nowhere thick enough to be noticed if you weren't paying close attention. There were other incidents like this before, but this was the first time that I realized that this was me being discriminated against. I remember how my coworkers glanced at each other when he said that. I didn't have any time to say anything else, except nod and say, "Okay." There were still other instances where I would notice him smiling or talking with one of my coworkers, but when he made eye contact with me, he would drop his smile and instantly go into boss mode. I realized that he wasn't a strict boss to other people. He just hated that I worked for him. I still tried to give him the benefit of the doubt and thought there must be something in the way that I do my work that isn't good enough. I was a young and naive girl, I guess. Anyways, Things continued like this for many months, and I sort of got used to this life. However, things changed one day when he decided to hire a new waitress. Let's call her Kaylee. I had been working at this restaurant for some time now and had never gotten a promotion or a raise. Within 1 month of Kaylee joining, she was given a position that was already above mine. She was younger than me with zero experience, and I had even asked Joshua months before if there was a chance of a promotion anytime soon. Kaylee was given the position, just like that, after a single month. When I asked Joshua about this, he said that she would be a better fit for the position. He then proceeded to say, "Our customers want a more authentic American diner experience, and you aren't a good fit, given where you're from," he said after a brief pause. I stood there, trying to process what I had just heard. I walked up to him and told him I was resigning, and he appeared almost glad to hear me say these words. My coworker saw me leaving in the middle of the day and followed me out, asking me what had happened. I quickly wiped my eyes and tried my best to act okay. I'm done with Joshua," I said with my voice shaking like a leaf. "What did he say?" they repeated. "That I wasn't a good fit for an authentic diner experience because of where I'm from." I could see from their faces that they were just as shocked as me. "He's not going to get away with this," one of them says. I won't return to the diner, of course, but my coworkers and I begin to plot our revenge from this day. For some time now, Joshua had been talking about how he was going to pitch a large expansion project to potential investors within a few months. This had been on his mind for quite some time, and it was an important goal for him. With a bit of subterfuge, Connor, one of my coworkers, well, ex-coworker now, managed to find out the names of these investors. I remember looking them up, and they were very much hotshots in their fields. The people in the pictures wore expensive suits and had those typical Ivy League haircuts. Looks like Joshua was after that big money. Simply informing them of Joshua's racism was not going to be enough. First of all, there was no way of knowing if these guys would even care about racism. I had a sense that as long as you could show potential to rake in cash, they wouldn't care. I was wrong. A little more research showed that virtually all of them were extremely woke, if you will. I'm not a particularly political person myself, but I knew that Joshua's big ambitions were done for if they found out about the way he treated his minority employees. My colleagues were mainly young college students, or people like me who had just finished high school and decided to work with a simple job for a bit. None of us had families that depended on us, and we could find another job to replace this one, easy peasy. I wasn't even the one who suggested what came next. It was Connor. We were out for drinks and brainstorming ways to deal with Joshua when he suddenly spoke up and said, "We should all quit together," and looked at the three of us sitting around him. "What?" I replied, a bit shocked. "That's right. We should do it on his big day. I'm not planning on staying here any longer. Are you guys?" Connor asks. My two other friends looked at each other, and I can see a slow conspiratory smile growing on their faces. "I'm in." "So am I," they each reply. "Guys, are you sure about this?" I ask, not wanting them to give up their jobs just for me. "We're sure. More importantly, we are sure that his face is going to be hilarious when we do it," Connor says and slaps me on the back. Weeks go by. I decide to start applying for colleges, but every time we got together, we discussed how and what to say for the best effect. It was ironic that I wouldn't be able to see Joshua's face firsthand. Connor and the others would have to paint a vivid picture of how it all went down, and thankfully they did. Finally, the big day arrived. I parked outside the diner and waited to see what would happen. The meeting was going to be held in the morning at about 7 a.m., 2 hours before the diner opened up. At about 6:55, I saw 3 black sedans pull up. All Audis and Bens were here. I almost felt sad for him, but not really. It all happened so fast. Shortly after the four investors went in, my friends walked out of the diner and were soon followed by the investors. This is how it went down inside. According to Connor, Joshua welcomed them in and had them sit down. He then asked if they wanted anything to drink, and before they could reply, my three amazing coworkers walked up to Joshua as he sat in front of his investors and told him they quit. Connor added a bit of spice and also said, "I don't want to work for a racist." Apparently, Joshua had tried to laugh it off as a practical joke and said, "Haha, very funny, guys," in the most cringe-worthy way possible. I still remember seeing the diner doors open and the investors walking straight to their cars with Joshua following, yelling that it was just a prank being played on him. Seeing his desperate face was the icing on the cake. Was I being a bit cruel? Perhaps. But he started it in the first place. Later that evening, I sent those same investors an email I had prepared well in advance explaining the sort of discrimination that I had faced. They replied within an hour, thanking me for bringing this information to them and assuring me that they had no plans of investing with someone that discriminates against minorities. It felt amazing that they actually believed me. I guess there are still some good people in this world. Joshua never pulled off any new ambitious project. I assumed that the incident ruined his reputation. All of us had left reviews on his Yelp, his Google business reviews, and Facebook page detailing his racist behavior. Yeah, his 4.7-star review restaurant now started losing its shine, and so did his business. The last I saw, his diner was sitting at a hilarious 2.1 stars, and he had to sell the place. Goodbye, Joshua. This was 16 years ago. I'm a hairdresser and love doing color. In the early years of my career, I went to a lot of additional color classes, so I have an in-depth knowledge of color theory. I had been working in one particular salon for a few years and had brought/grown a damn good clientele when I got pregnant with my twins. I was in my 30s at the time, and there was a lot of concerns about my physical well-being by my team of physicians. While pregnant, my employer found out that she had cancer. I am very loyal to people I consider a friend. And when I tell you I went above and beyond, even while experiencing a high-risk pregnancy, is not an exaggeration. I was supposed to be cutting my hours, but instead I would frequently open and close her salons a few times a week, picking up more hours, being as I was the only one of 3 people that had a key and alarm code. I literally did everything I could to assist her during a very stressful and scary time in her life. She used to even go so far as to joke that I would drop my twins on the salon floor. I work such long hours. I also have to add that during this time, I caught my twins' father cheating on me when I was 6 months pregnant, and I dumped him immediately. This is going to be important info later. After 3 hospitalizations and 3 weeks out from my due date, after the last 24-hour hospitalization, I finally started my maternity leave. I was back to work 1 day a week, 3 weeks after having a C-section. So 6 weeks total maternity leave. And 2 weeks after that, I was back to my regular work schedule with newborn twins. I'll also add that my twins' father was being an a-hole, not showing up for scheduled weekend visits, jamming me up on childcare, and overall just wreaking havoc in my life. While all of this is going on, one of my clients informed me that they were being encouraged to schedule with another stylist, since my employer didn't believe I was going to stay because of my new babies. Of course I was staying. I was a single mom. I needed my income. And every time you switch a salon, you're projected to lose at least 10% of your clientele. At least. There had also been a few passive-aggressive comments by my employer. You know, the one I had gone above and beyond for to be supportive of while she was going through it, about running late or needing to reschedule clients last minute because my ex was jamming me up. She also started complaining about me double booking. which I had been doing for years, and is SOP in this line of work. Needless to say, I saw where this was going, so cue my petty revenge. I proceeded to take all of my client cards home that we were mandated to keep at the front desk and change all my color formulations to their target colors only. My employer noticed my cards were missing, called me, asking where they were. I gave her a BS story that info needed updating and I would bring them back my next scheduled workday. The following week, with no notice, I was terminated, but my revenge was already in motion. I heard from another stylist a few weeks after that my clients were getting pissed. These clients were being assured that the other stylists could provide the same service as they had the color formulations and the caveat they were given discount prices to keep the clientele. So not only were they trying to undercut me financially, but trying to use my knowledge to do it. But these nimrods proceeded to mix exactly what I had on the cards, when a cursory review of the client's hair and a basic knowledge of color theory would have indicated what was on the card was not the actual formulation, but the target color. Imagine orange hair, but instead of a deep red violet or extremely brassy, in lieu of beige blonde. That's right, people had to think for their money and not ride on my coattails. I might not have been able to keep all of my clients, but no one else was going to make money off of investments that I made in myself earlier. To this day, I absolutely refuse to leave my formulations accessible to anyone else, and have never, ever trusted another employer to have my back. Sorry to any of my old clients who may be reading this, if you got jammed up in my petty revenge, but to know me, it is to know that this is in par with who I am. Editing for spelling. Thanks to the one who caught it for me. Edit 2. Just to answer some frequently asked questions. When I lost the job, I lost my childcare, so there was a slight delay in getting to a new salon, as I had to find an alternate solution. That didn't involve 2 babies in daycare. I contacted all of my clients via email after my termination, and offered to do house visits until I could get established in another salon. Some took me up on it, and others gambled. The twins are now 15, and we are all doing well. I got married a few years ago to a real keeper. He loves my kids and is an awesome provider. That was fair. They treated you poorly instead of trying to help you out during a rough patch. Good on you. Too many people are happy to exploit others. Just play fair and everyone can benefit. Be an a-hole? F around and find out.